I just want to talk about WikiLeaks, because I'm sure you've all heard of Julian Assange, and he was kind of a bit of a hero in the media. Now, last year he released what are called war logs. Now, these were they put them out on their website. This guy is basically he's not a whistleblower, but he encourages whistleblowers to come forward and ensures their anonymity and allows them to produce or put out secret government documents. Now, some of the documents that he produced last year were war logs. Now, every time something happens in Afghanistan, let's say they raid a village or something, they kill 10 people, that goes down in a log. So they have to log how many people were murdered, they have to log what weapons were used, what weapons were fired, who was involved, where it was, what time it was, and that goes down in a log. Now, Assange was leaked 90,000 of these logs, 90,000 incidents in which American operations had took place in Afghanistan. Now, that equates to about 40-odd incidents every day. So the amount of data that this guy leaked was phenomenal. You could build a picture extremely accurately over the years what happened during the Afghan war, and when you look at it, basically they're committing mass genocide. It's as simple as that. They take very few prisoners, for example. But and I was, when I saw that, I thought that's incredible that he's managed to leak this, and I thought what a brave man and all the rest of it. But he made one comment last year. He got into bed with and started working with The Guardian and a German newspaper and an American newspaper. And he came out with a statement that he was asked about 9/11, and he said, well, we deal with the real conspiracies at WikiLeaks, not I can't remember the words that he used, but he basically said that 9/11 was a false conspiracy. There was no conspiracy involved in 9/11. And at that moment, this guy's credibility just went straight down the drain for me. Now, I don't know whether he's been some kind of operative or agent from day one, or whether he was compromised once he's got into bed with The Guardian and these other mainstream newspapers, and they've said to them, look, maybe they've said to him, right, okay, we'll publish this, that, and the other, but you don't go near 9/11. I don't think we can trust this guy, and all this stuff about this rape, I just think that's all orchestrated. The war logs seem to be extremely important information, but who knows? I suspect Assange is a way of having a controlled opposition, if you like. Now we come on to the next false flag terrorist attack, which is the 7/7 London bombings, which I've covered a lot on my TV show. And again, on a forum like this, I haven't got time to go into all of the detail, but briefly, on the day of 7/7, there was a mock terrorist training exercise organised by Visor Consultants, and Peter Power, who was organising those mock terrorist training drills, stated that the actual place where the actual bombs were detonated were precisely at the same targets that the training exercises had. Now, that should set alarm bells running off for everyone, because this is how they orchestrate these false flag attacks. It enables them to control those sites. They've already got control of the cameras, they've got control of the police in those areas, and this is why they orchestrate false flag attacks in this way during training exercises. There was flaws in the timeline, and there is no genuine CCTV evidence of any of the alleged bombers at King's Cross before bombs were detonated. Now that's a very important statement, because the BBC keeps showing this phony clip, and they also show clips from a previous date when they're talking about the 7/7 date. And there's a very important fabricated CCTV image taken at Luton Station. That itself, that one fabricated image, is the authorities trying to pervert the course of justice. They've put out a doctored image of these alleged terrorists. And there was reports on that morning of alleged bombers being shot at Canary Wharf. If they've blown themselves up on the trains, how can they be shot at Canary Wharf? Another major flaw in the official story. And also on one of the tubes, there were actually 3 large holes in the floor. How can one suicide bomber create 3 holes several yards apart from each other? Okay, now I just want to read a little bit from Nick Collestrom's book. Nick Collestrom he lives in London and he's been researching 7/7 since it happened. He's attended all of the various trials, he's attended the inquest, he's an academic, he was at Imperial College London, and he's written a book called Terror on the Tube. Now in this book, I just want to, about a week, 8 days after the 7/7 London bombings, both the police and the media went up to Beeston, that's part of Leeds, where 3 of the alleged bombers lived. This guy on the screen, Mohammed Siddiqui Khan, him and a friend, one of the other alleged bombers, I will not call them bombers, they worked at a place called the Iqra Learning Centre, which was an Islamic bookshop. And the police and the media went there 7 days after 7/7. I'm just going to read it. Its owner, Naveed Fiaz, was arrested under anti-terror laws and taken to 10 days of solitary confinement at Paddington Green. The press arrived at the shop. Now, what the press said was that they were using, the shop was basically recruiting youngsters and filling them with anti-Western messages. But in fact, the shop, all it was doing was selling like peace material, like George Galloway DVDs and John Pilger's films. Now, what happened was, they basically, the guy who owned the shop, the media turned up because they wanted to do a news story about this alleged shop selling propaganda. The guy turns up with his key and he says, right, I'll open the shop for you if you want to get some footage of what we're selling here, what we're doing. It's just, some of it's Islamic literature, some of it's anti-war material. And the police said, no, we don't want you to open that. The guy's standing there with his key. We're going to blow the door in, and the media are going to film it, so it looks like they're doing a raid. The guy's standing there with his key, and they smashed his shop up. I'll just read this. Locals believe the police raid on the bookshop was orchestrated for the media. They had the key to the shop, but they used a battering ram to break down the door anyway and pulled the shutters off, says Mohammed. The media were there waiting for them. It was all done in front of the cameras, Tanvir added. The police just chose to raid that shop as a publicity stunt. A guy from the bookshop was saying, here's the key, take a look, it's not a problem, but they refused. The police went in there and blew the doors off. So this is the kind of tactics that our police and media are up to in order to try and convince people of these false flag attacks. Now, there's a key piece of evidence which wasn't discussed at the recent inquest into 7/7. It's not been discussed at length in any newspapers, and it's CCTV evidence of a black Jaguar at Luton train station. Now, Luton train station is where the 4 alleged bombers arrived in 2 separate cars, met there, they parked their cars in Luton train station car park and then got the train to London and then allegedly set off their bombs. But there's a black Jaguar car identified and it's clearly part of their operation. It was there, parked on the day of their dummy run, and it was also parked in the same place on the day of 7/7. And various portions of this CCTV footage have been removed. The police, the media and the inquest are not interested in this clip. This is a key piece of evidence in 7/7 and it shows that authorities or some kind of minder was involved in controlling the alleged terrorists. At 6:49, reparked his car, captured here on CCTV. 3 minutes later, there is an 88-second gap in the CCTV sequence, which has been removed by the authorities, during which the Jaguar drives in and parks 50 yards away in the same car park, in the same place it parked during the dummy run 9 days earlier. Why have they removed the part of the film of the Jaguar arriving? Shortly after this, the second of the alleged bombers' cars, a Nissan Micra containing the remaining members of the team, arrive from Leeds. Immediately, the headlights of the Jaguar switch on and it starts driving towards where the 2 cars are now parked. Just as the Jaguar approaches the 2 cars, again the CCTV cuts out for another 76 seconds. Look carefully at this image. Is the Jaguar driver keeping to the left because they are intending to park next to the alleged bombers' 2 cars? Very possibly. In the next CCTV image available, we see the two cars still parked and an additional car, which could be the Jaguar, parked next to them. So neither the police nor the inquest are bothered about who's in that Jaguar. And it has been suggested that it was Peter Power who was running this terrorist drill. Now, we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. I'm currently trying to find out what kind of car Peter Power had. And if that can be proven, or if we can find who was driving that Jaguar, it could blow the official story right apart and provide proof that it was an intelligence plot. Now, I just want to come on to the next false flag attack I'm going to talk about, which took place in December 2009. This is known as the Underpants bomber. This was on a flight from Amsterdam to Michigan. I've done a little graphic here. I just want to point out, they are not my underpants. I wouldn't be seen dead in a pair of those. Mine have got Buzz Lightyear on the front. Okay. Now, what happened was this young black man boarded this flight without a passport, and he sat towards the front of the plane, and then as it was coming into land, he started setting off some kind of explosive in his pants. Now, this guy, this witness here, Kurt Haskell, who's a very astute guy, he's a lawyer. Now, he's one of the key witnesses to this because he was at Amsterdam airport while this black man was being allowed onto the plane, and he claims that the man got onto the plane without a passport. And Kurt Haskell explains what happened on the Alex Jones show.
Okay, so before we boarded, obviously we're in Amsterdam. It was just my wife and I. There weren't any seats in the boarding area, so we sat on the floor by what I would call the ticket agent, the last person that checks your boarding pass before you board the plane. We're about 10 feet away or so, just playing cards. And, passing time, and I was kind of people watching, and I saw these two men approach the ticket agent, and they just kind of caught my eye because it seemed strange to me that they were together. One I would describe as he looked like he was a poor, a black teenager is how I would describe him, 16, 17 years old or so. And the other man looked like a 50-ish, he looked wealthy, what I would say Indian man now, whether he's of a similar race or something, I don't know, but to me, it looked like he was from India. And they approached this ticket agent together. It was quiet, and I could hear the entire conversation. Only the Indian man spoke, not the black man, and what he said was, this man needs to board the plane, he doesn't have a passport. The ticket agent then responded, well, if you don't have a passport, you can't board the plane. And then the Indian man responded, he's from Sudan, we do this all the time. And the ticket agent then said, well, you'll need to talk to my manager or something along those lines, and pointed the two men down a hallway to go speak to the manager. They then proceeded down the hallway. This was the only time I saw this particular Indian man. Shortly after they went down the hallway, we boarded the plane. I can see three possibilities, and which one you think it was, I don't know. Three would be there was a bribe, there was some sort of personal relationship between this man and the security manager, and number three would be that this is a regular routine procedure to get on planes without a passport for refugees of war-torn countries.
Well, it's not. They've got to get special letters from the embassy. That's yeah, go ahead.
Pick which one of the three you think it is. To me, those are the only choices.
Or he was an intelligence agent telling the young fool he was part of a drill.
Okay. It was a really uneventful flight. We're in the middle of our descent into Detroit. The pilot comes on the speaker, and he says we have 10 minutes to landing. Flight crew, take your seats and buckle up. A flight attendant walks by my seat, mumbling to herself, something smells like smoke. I look up. I'm in row 27. I could see smoke coming from row 19, 8 rows up. It wasn't a lot of smoke at that time, and it looked like it was coming from the floor, but I couldn't see the floor because I was sitting down. So I unbuckled my seatbelt, took a few steps up the aisle to get a better look, and then it burst into flames across the floor of the seats and up the wall to the ceiling. When it burst into flames, people were screaming, "Fire! Fire! Terrorists! Water! 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 We need water! Somebody get water!" Flight attendants were screaming. The pilot comes on the intercom and says, "Emergency landing," and starts speeding up. And while this is going on, the terrorist man's being hauled off into the first class area by a couple passengers.
Now, after Kurt Haskell started giving out this information, he was interviewed by the FBI, and they started showing him photographs. And he testifies that he felt the FBI were trying to trip him up. In other words, they were trying to get him to misidentify something in order to discredit him as a witness.